Hey, what's going on, guys? Realm Gaming here, back with another video. Today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Mistweaver Monk for patch 11.05. All right, let's quickly talk about Ancient Teachings. So Ancient Teachings is now a baseline, but it only does 30% of the damage done, split evenly among them. So if your Ancient Teachings does fall off now, we're not punished quite as much as we were before. And this also added Crackling Jade Lightning to the mix. Now, down here at the very bottom, we have Jadefire Teachings. So after casting Jadefire Stomp or Thunder Focus T, Ancient Teachings transfers an additional 140% damage to healing for 15 seconds. And then while this is active, we get 5% more stamina. So this is really nice because this is procced by not only our Jadefire Stomp, but also our Thunder Focus T. So we have basically more ways to proc this now. This was one of the concerns I had when they removed Essence Font earlier in the War Within with the new expansion, right? Essence Font got completely removed. And I said, well, how are we going to be able to proc our Ancient Teachings, or in this case, Jadefire Teachings? You know, now we're like completely reliant on Jadefire Stomp. So this is really nice to see. Now, speaking of Thunder Focus T, we did see some additional changes with that due to Crackling Jade Lightning through the Jade Empowerment talent. So casting Thunder Focus T increases your next Crackling Jade Lightning's damage by 800% and causes it to chain to 4 additional enemies. This, long story short, gives us another mini cooldown. So this is going to be on about a 30-second cooldown, right, with your Thunder Focus T, because we can only use it once after we Thunder Focus T. And this is going to do a whole bunch of damage, and it's going to do a whole bunch of healing. I ran a dungeon here, and you can see Crackling Jade Lightning was my top damage ability by far. A few other changes is Ancient Concordance is now completely gone, and the Blackout kick effect from that spell has been put into Awakened Jadefire here. Now, another new talent that we have here is Rushing Wind Kick, and this is going to replace your Rising Sun Kick, but it is going to inherit all of its effects. Anything that really scales with Rising Sun Kick will also scale with Rushing Wind Kick. So to read it out here, kick up a powerful gust of wind, dealing X amount of nature damage and a 25-yard cone to enemies in front of you, split evenly among them. Damage is increased by 6% for each target hit, up to 30%, and also grants Rushing Winds for 4 seconds, increasing Renewing Mist healing by 50%. So when I first heard about this ability, I didn't realize that it gained all the effects of Rising Sun Kick, so it's really not as bad as I had initially thought. When I first read this, I thought this was completely garbage because Rising Sun Kick is so core to Mistweaver Monk, but the fact that it inherits everything from Rising Sun Kick, all the talents and modifiers and everything, it's not as bad as I had originally thought. I think this might have something to do with like a Castweaver playstyle, but to be honest, since it is a choice node between Jadefire Teachings, I just don't think this is something that we'll be running. Maybe if you play like Castweaver or something, then you might run it, but to be honest, I don't see many situations where you'd be running this over Jadefire Teachings. Then we also have a new node here called Refreshment. So Life Cocoon grants up to 5 stacks of Mana Tea and applies 2 stacks of Healing Elixir to its target. And then we have some changes here to Calming Coalescence. We no longer rely on those Soothing Mist stacks to get this up to 80%. It's just baseline 80%. So really cool to see this, as I do believe that Life Cocoon was kind of awkward to throw in your tank. It wasn't hardly enough. It's completely fine for DPS targets, but on a tank, you know, them absorbing like a huge damage ability, it just wasn't quite enough. You know, any sort of tank buster would just eat through Life Cocoon. So being able to have this additional buff, I think, is really nice. Okay, in terms of new talents and whatnot, that's pretty much all I'm going to cover. There's a few other small things, but I think that is the bulk of changes that we received. Okay, let's quickly talk about like how you even heal with Mistweaver Monk. So typically what we're going to be doing is we're going to really focus on spreading out our Renewing Mist. And the reason you're going to do that is due to a talent. Let me see if I can find it here. Right here. Chi Harmony. So Renewing Mist increases target's healing received from you by 50% for the first 8 seconds of its duration, but cannot jump to a new target during this time. So this is an old set bonus from Dragonflight that is now in the War Within. And basically when Renewing Mist is on a target, you get 50% more healing on them. So you want to play around Chi Harmony, you want to play around Renewing Mist, keeping that heal over time effect up. And it can be a little bit easier if you go into something like Pool of Mist here, because this is going to give you 3 charges of Renewing Mist. And then just to read it out here, Renewing Mist now has 3 charges and reduces the remaining cooldown of Rising Sun Kick by 1 second. Rising Sun Kick is very core to use as much as you can, because Rising Sun Kick also applies a Renewing Mist. And then the second part of this is Rising Sun Kick now reduces the remaining cooldown of Renewing Mist by 1 second. So sort of like a yin-yang sort of effect going on here. You got your Renewing Mist buffing Rising Sun Kick, and your Rising Sun Kick buffing Renewing Mist. And I say buffing, but reducing the cooldown of them. So that's the number one rule of Mistweaver Monk, is to keep Renewing Mist up on as many targets as you possibly can. Now, rule number 2 is always be standing in your Jadefire Stomp. If you're not familiar with what that is, basically you throw this ground effect on the ground, and it does a little bit of burst healing and damage, but the main reason you want to cast this spell is due to a talent here called Awaken Jadefire. So I'll just read this one out. Your abilities reset Jadefire Stomp 100% more often. While within your Jadefire Stomp, your Tiger Palm strike twice, your Blackout Kick strike an additional 2 targets at 70% effectiveness, and your Spinning Crane Kick heals 3 nearby allies for 90% of the damage done. Now, in a Mythic Plus environment, Spinning Crane Kick is going to be one of your main damage and your main healing abilities. So if we look at, I reset it, but for me personally, it's my number 2 overall damage ability behind our Crackling Jade Lightning, which we'll go over here in just a minute. But you always want to make sure that you are in your Awakened Jadefire due to the second sentence here while within your Jadefire Stomp, right? You don't get any of these benefits unless you're within your Jadefire Stomp. So your Spinning Crane Kick gets no healing unless you are standing within this green pattern here on the ground. Now, I do have a weak art here. You can kind of see as I move in and out, it goes from blue to white, and that tracks whether or not I'm standing in my Jadefire Stomp, because it can get kind of hectic in a Mythic Plus environment to know whether or not you're actually in there or not with all the mobs and stuff. But yeah, that's rule number 2. Always be within your Jadefire Stomp. And another cool thing that I do with Jadefire Stomp is I have a macro with it. So you can see it's on my 2 key. When I cast Jadefire Stomp, then I can go into a Chi Burst. Now, the reason you want to do that is because your Chi Burst has a very high chance to reset the cooldown on your Jadefire Stomp, giving you another one to use. So I didn't get it there, unfortunately, but let's go ahead and take a look at what Chi Burst even is. So I'm going to read this one out. So hurl a torrent of Chi energy up to 40 yards in front of you, dealing X amount of nature damage and X amount of healing to the monk and all allies in its path. Healing and damage is reduced beyond 5 targets. Now, the reason this has a high chance of resetting the cooldown on your Jadefire Stomp is due to the Jadefire Stomp ability itself. If we look at the second paragraph here, your abilities have a 6% chance of resetting the cooldown of Jadefire Stomp while fighting within the path. So each time your Chi Burst damages an enemy or heals an ally, that counts as a 6% chance individually. And if you have a whole bunch of mobs around you and a whole bunch of allies around you, right, you just basically cast a Chi Burst, and it's almost always a guaranteed reset on your Jadefire Stomp. I would say in 80 to 90% of cases, it is resetting my Jadefire Stomp in a Mythic Plus environment. So you really want to try to follow up a Jadefire Stomp immediately with a Chi Burst. That way you see I got a reset there on just a couple of targets, because you always want to have your Jadefire Stomp accessible. If something happens and the tank moves the pack over here to the left, you want to be able to move with the tank. But unfortunately, your Jadefire Stomp can't move with you unless it's off cooldown, right? So that's kind of the thought process behind that. We already talked about Spinning Crane Kick a little bit. I mean, it's just going to be, you just press it. It does damage. It does healing while you are within your Jadefire Stomp. So make sure that you are casting while you're standing within your stomp here. Okay, let's talk about Rising Sun Kick. So we have talked about Rising Sun Kick a little bit already. So when we press it, it's going to do a whole bunch of damage, a whole bunch of healing, and it will also apply Renewing Mist. Now, one thing about this spell is it will only apply Renewing Mist to an ally. It won't apply it to yourself, so just kind of keep that in mind. And Mistweaver Monk sort of has this typical sort of damage sequence that they do. And it's almost always going to be in this exact same order. So what I do is I have put it into a macro, and that way I've basically combined 3 spells into 1 button to kind of help reduce button bloat. So basically what you can do here is you can cast your Jadefire Stomp, go into a Rising Sun Kick, 2 Tiger Palms, and Blackout Kick. And that has kind of been the staple of the Mistweaver Monk rotation for a very long time now, and it does not change here in 1105. Now, one thing that makes this work is through Teachings of the Monastery, Blackout Kick has a 20% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Rising Sun Kick. So if we have 4 stacks of Teaching of the Monastery, that's going to be times 20%. We're going to have an 80% chance to get that reset on our Rising Sun Kick. So that's kind of why this macro works, is because you can Rising Sun Kick into 2 Tiger Palms. You can get the 4 Blackout Kicks for the 80% chance on reset of Rising Sun Kick. See, I got the reset and I can just kind of keep going most of the time. So that's kind of how that works. And then we also have our Thunder Focus T. So if you guys remember from earlier, pretty sure we covered this, but Crackling Jade Lightning, that is 800% more damage, after casting our Thunder Focus T. So if you're not sure what Thunder Focus T is, basically it's just an ability here. And this is basically going to buff the next casted ability. And it has to be one of the 4: Enveloping Mist, Renewing Mist, Vivify, Rising Sun Kick, or Expel Harm. So let me bring it up here. This is probably a little bit easier to read. So a lot of these are spells that we haven't covered yet, but that's okay because you're going to be using this pretty much only on Renewing Mist. At least that's what I find myself doing because you get so much value out of Renewing Mist. It's just so core to our talent tree. It's just a great button to press. And in addition, since we are taking Pool of Mist, we have so many additional charges of Renewing Mist to be able to do that. So that 10% increased duration of Renewing Mist is going to be very strong to us. Now again, through Jade Empowerment, we get a huge Crackling Jade Lightning after casting it. So what we've done is we've put this into a macro as well. So this is the macro here, and what this is going to do, you're going to cast a Thunder Focus T into a Crackling Jade Lightning into a Renewing Mist. One thing about this macro is be careful because any movement while casting Crackling Jade Lightning will cancel the effect, and you're going to lose a whole bunch of damage and healing. It's kind of difficult for me to get used to as well. So I'm making some typos here as I'm trying to move around. So let's see if the macro works. So we'll just go to our target dummy. We'll Thunder Focus T. We'll Crackling Jade Lightning, a ton of damage, a ton of healing. And then you can see here we cast a Renewing Mist on ourselves. So you have to press the button 3 times. Then after 10 seconds, the sequence will reset. Now, while we're on the topic of T, let's go ahead and talk about our Mana T as well. So basically, Mana T, as you are in combat and doing damage and doing healing, you're going to be gaining stacks of Mana T, and you can just press it. I have 2 stacks of it right here. It's on my Shift 5, and this will cast very quickly here. But what it does is each stack of Mana T is like 1/10 of a second or something like that. So the more stacks you get, the longer the cast, but the more mana that you restore. So a fully stacked Mana T at 20 stacks is like 80% of your mana bar. So typically I drink Mana T either in a very low damage phase if I need it, or just in between packs. One thing to note as well with Mana T is it will reduce your movement speed while you're casting it. So be very careful with that. All right, now let's talk about Shaylin's gifts. So let me start doing some damage here to the target. And as I do damage, you see I've got 2 stacks of Shaylin's gift. So it's these little orbs, these little clouds that are around me. And basically what you can do is you can press your Shaylin's gift and absorb those to do healing. Now, one kind of a tip with this is if we remember with Renewing Mists, right through our Chi Harmony, you get 50% more healing out of any of your spells while you have Renewing Mist on a target. So what you want to be doing is you want to make sure that you have a Renewing Mist on as many targets as possible, and you can basically increase the effectiveness of this spell by 50%. Up next, we have Expel Harm. Expel Harm is kind of like your sort of emergency healing. I use it on myself due to a talent here. I can find it really quick. I believe it's this one. Yeah. Expel Harm's healing is increased by 30% based on your missing health. So it's going to be way more powerful to use it on yourself rather than somebody else. And I would say if I'm at 20% health, this is probably going to get me back up to like 50 to 60% health. So pretty strong button to press on a very short cooldown. So if you ever have like a situation where you need to heal yourself and another target, Expel Harm yourself and then heal the other target. Okay, man, there's so much stuff to talk about with Mistweaver Monk. Okay, let's talk about Vivify now. So Vivify is your single target heal if you're familiar with like other healing specs like Regrowth on Resto Druid, Flash of Light on Holy Paladin. Every single healing spec has some sort of like basic casted heal, and this is Mistweaver Monk's basic casted heal. Now, one thing that's really cool about this is you can see I have it glowing right here. And what this is a talent, and it's called Vivacious Vivification. So let's go ahead and take a look at how that works. So every 10 seconds, your next Vivify becomes instant, and its healing is increased by 20%. So what you can do is, Vivify is a very interesting spell. This is very, very core, and it's very important to understand how Vivify works. So every 10 seconds, I get a new charge of this instant cast Vivify. So right now, I could use it, and there goes my charge. And then in 2 more seconds, I get another one. There's another charge, right? So it can be very clutch to track this, right? Because you don't want to like overcap this essentially. So just for example here, if I let this kind of keep ticking, and I'll just let it kind of expire here, and let's let it expire, then it'll reset, and then I use Vivify. Now I'm stuck for 8 seconds here, and I basically wasted a Vivify. So typically what I like to do is I always want to make sure that I'm getting like at least a back-to-back Vivify, because it can be very powerful. We'll explain why here in a minute. But I want to use Vivify like now, then I get a reset, and then I can use it again. You know, that's pretty good for like a burst of emergency single target healing, but you can also use the spell as an AoE heal. And that's going to be due to a spell here called Zen Pulse, or a talent, excuse me. So a passive here, renewing Mist Heal every time has a chance to cause your next Vivify to also trigger Zen Pulse on its target. And all allies with renewing Mist healing them for 100,000, increased by 6% per renewing mist active up to 30%. So another reason that you want to be spreading these renewing mist out on all targets is because Vivify will heal the targets that have a renewing mist on them. And the reason Vivify turns into an AoE spell is due to invigorating mist here. Vivify heals all allies with renewing mist active for X amount. So basically, you can proc your Zen Pulse on all the allies with renewing mist through your Vivify. So kind of confusing, but just know that whenever you have renewing mist out on all your different targets, Vivify will heal all of them, and then you get a bonus healing to that through a Zen Pulse. So what's a Zen Pulse look like? I wish I could get it to proc here. I might play around here for a second, but basically it's this green sort of bar that will pop up over here on the right. Let me make a cut in the video. So here it is. We got it to proc. It's this green little bar here. That's how you know Zen Pulse is ready. And it's basically just going to be increased healing for you through one of your Vivifies. So what does this mean? This means that we need to be tracking our instant cast Vivifies, and we're going to be sending those out as much as we can, because not only is it good for single target, it's great for just AoE spread healing. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is Soothing Mist. So a lot of monks weren't taking Soothing Mist at the start of the season. I don't know why, but I was one of the ones who decided I am not running without Soothing Mist, and I think most people are taking it now. But the way Soothing Mist works is it's a channeled ability, and you can kind of channel it on a target here. You can see this line, and it's very mana efficient for an okay amount of single target healing, but it is channeled. So if you start moving around, it will cancel. So I have sort of a combo here. Let me just show you what it looks like really quick. Basically, it's a Soothing Mist into an instant cast Enveloping Mist into a Vivify. So I messed it up there. That's why it looked wrong. Let me try it again. I didn't press the button fast enough. So it's a Soothing Mist into an Enveloping Mist into instant cast Vivifies. So we haven't talked about Enveloping Mist yet. We've talked about Soothing Mist. We've talked about Vivify. Let's talk about Enveloping Mist. So wraps the target in healing mist, healing for X amount over 6 seconds, and increases healing received from your other spells by 30%. This will also apply renewing mist for 6 seconds to an ally within 6 yards. Now, the reason that this is pretty strong is because this is going to beef up your next Vivifies that you follow up with it by 30%. So it can be a very potent single target heal. In my opinion, it's one of the strongest single target heals in the game, especially in PvP. And you can take a target, especially a DPS, from like 10% health to 100% health in just a couple seconds with this. So it's a very clutch spell. The problem with it is it does kind of require some setup. So I actually have two different macros for this. So let's take a quick look at it. So the first one here is the one that I just talked about. It's on my control 1, and it's a Soothing Mist into an Enveloping into 3 Vivify. So this is really strong. Now, again, you have to spam it if it has a reset of 1 on it. So that means if you don't spam this button, it will reset and it'll just continue to cast Soothing Mist. So you have to spam it to get that single target healing out. But the reason that I have 2 different macros here is because sometimes the setup of this takes a little bit too long. So for example, a Soothing Mist into an Enveloping Mist is 2 globals, and 2 seconds in a Mythic Plus dungeon sometimes is enough for somebody to die. So I have on my control 2 a second Soothing Mist macro that takes the Enveloping Mist completely out of it, and goes directly into Vivifies. So if I press Control 2, we'll do a Soothing Mist into just straight Vivify spam. These Vivifies are not being buffed by 30% though, because there's no Enveloping Mist, right? So I keep 2 on my action bar. You know, depends on the situation. If somebody's at 5% health, I'm pressing Control 2. If a tank is at 50% health or a big bleed just came up, I know they're about to be taking sustained damage, I'll go into a Control 1 to get those beefed up Vivifies. Okay, let's talk about one more macro here, our Transcendence and Transcendence Transfer macro. So the way this works, I'm going to take the comment out the back of it, is these are 2 different spells. So if you want to do this normally, you can just take both spells and just put on your action bar, but I like everything in one spell. Concise, I don't have to mess with 2 different keybinds, right? So I put it on my Alt 3, and a perfect example of when to use this is Final Boss of City of Echoes. She's got that sort of suck mechanic that will pull you in, and you can actually as a Mistweaver Monk, Transcendence swap out of that. Now you have to time it just perfectly, like right as she's pulling you in to do the swap. But if you time it perfectly, you never have to do the effect where you have to stand in the pools and get rooted by the blobs, right? Anyways, to show you how this works, we could press Alt 3, and that will put our sort of clone out, and then we can press Alt 3 again, and it does the swap all in one button. So very nice to have in a pinch situation. Up next, we have our Ring of Peace macro. This is just going to make it cast at your cursor. So I have it on my Alt 4. I just press it, and it goes wherever my cursor is. I don't have to use the green button to target it. Let's talk about a few cooldowns here as well. Most of the stuff's kind of minor, so I'm going to skip over most of it. Okay, we got our Mastery here, Gust of Mist. This is actually pretty strong. You do quite a bit of healing through your Mastery, even though it's not one of our best stats to take. But it's important to know how it works, because it's, you know, you're going to pull up your logs and you're going to say, what the heck is this Mastery Gust of Mist? You can see just in my testing here is doing about 15% of my total healing, so a fair amount. But anyways, the way it works is Renewing Mist, Enveloping Mist, Rising Sun Kick, Expel Harm, Revival. All these spells here cause a gust of healing mist, instantly healing the primary target for X amount. So about as simple as it gets. A lot of your main spells have a chance to kick up this gust of mist, and it will do more healing. Now, where this spell really starts to scale is through our Crane style. So Rising Sun Kick now kicks up a gust of mist to heal 2 allies within 40 yards, and then Spinning Crane Kick and Blackout Kick have a chance to kick up a gust of mist as well. So as you're kind of, you know, doing your normal damage rotation, you're going to have these gust of mist going out, just kind of randomly healing allies. Very nice. And that's one of the reasons that Mistweaver Monk can just kind of muscle heal through a lot of hard encounters without a bunch of thinking. You just kind of go in, drop your Jadefire, do your damage, and health bars just kind of go up. It's one of the reasons I really like to play Mistweaver. We also have our Invoke Chi-Chi the Red Crane. So this is on a 1-minute cooldown, and that is due to Gift of the Celestials here. That will reduce that by 2 minutes, I believe. Reduce the cooldown, yeah, by 2 minutes. So you can have this up for pretty much every single pack and higher keys. And this spell also really synergizes well with our Mastery. It's going to kick up those Gust of Mists. When we drop it, it's going to do a bunch of passive healing. So if you really want to use this, probably at the start of a pull, or if you're on a boss. I wouldn't use this at the start of a boss. On a trash pack, I would. But on a boss, I'd probably save this for a hard-hitting mechanic. But you can just drop it, and it's just going to do a bunch of passive healing. As you do damage, it's going to be kicking up all those Gust of Mist. It's going to be doing a ton of healing for you. So one of the easiest cooldowns to use in the game. Really like that. Up next, we have Revival. Revival is very, very clutch in Season 1. It's been clutch for a long time, but it's basically, let's just read it out. It just goes better if I just read it out. 3-minute cooldown, heals all party and raid members within 40 yards for 1 million, and clears them of 3 harmful magic, poison, and all disease effects. Healing's reduced beyond 5 targets. So this is going to be really good. I believe there's some trash in City of Threads that puts out 5 poisons, and essentially you press this button and all those poisons are instantly removed. It's like a Poison Cleanse totem that heals, but it's on a longer cooldown. So it can be used for healing, but for the most part, you're going to be using this as a dispel. So that's probably where you're going to get the most value out of it, is by preventing damage rather than healing through it. And then we also have our main hero talent, Celestial Conduit. Long story short with this spell, it's on a 1.5-minute cooldown. Don't be afraid to use it. You're going to use it, and it's going to do a bunch of pulsing AoE damage and a bunch of pulsing AoE healing. And at the very bottom, we do have Unity Within and it's going to cast again at the end of the effect for 200% effectiveness. So yeah, it's pretty much it for cooldowns. We also do have, Shaylin's Gift. I like to kind of consider that a cooldown. And then we also have the Thunder Focus Tea into our Crackling Jade Lightning. That's like a mini cooldown as well. So we have a ton of tools, a ton of utilities. We have, I also forgot, we also have Life Cocoon. So this is, again, just another reason I love to play Mistweaver Monk is due to all the short cooldowns that they have. 30-second Thunder Focus Tea. Probably takes 30 seconds to build up a full stack Shaylin's Gift. Maybe less than that. 1 minute Red Crane. Minute and a half Celestial Conduit. And then a little bit over a minute Life Cocoon. So Life Cocoon is going to be like the lay on hands of heal absorbs. So not only is it going to put a big shield around the target, it's also going to increase all healing that they receive by 50%. So just show you guys what this looks like. You could just kind of put it on a mouse over or whatever. You can do it in your settings too through mouse overs. But just hover over target, press it. Got this big cocoon on them now. And then you can just kind of help heal them up while that life cocoon is on them for increased healing. Okay, let's just quickly talk about rotation, I guess. I mean, there's really not a rotation, but I'll just quickly kind of go through the buttons. You can kind of see what I'm pressing. If I were to go into a Mythic Plus pull, this is a trash pack. This is probably what I would do. So I'd probably put down a Jadefire Stomp into a Chi Burst. Then I'd go into a Thunder Focus Tea, then into a Crackling Jade Lightning. Then I would probably get a Renewing Mist up. I'd be pressing Renewing Mist on a few other allies. And then I would be going into Spinning Crane Kick spams. Refreshing my Jadefire Stomp into Spinning Crane Kick spams. Every time Jadefire Stomp resets, I'm pressing it again. And I'm just spamming. And I'm applying Renewing Mists as they become available. Get rid of those charges. Spamming. Chi Bursting when I can to reset my Jadefire Stomp. And I'm just spamming Spinning Crane Kick. And then as Thunder Focus Tea comes back, then I can put that into a Crackling Jade Lightning, follow that up with a Renewing Mist. That's kind of, 3 or 4 buttons. That's kind of what I'm rotating between. Okay, now let's say you have a target that gets an ally, let's say that gets really low on health. They're 5% health. I'd be using my Control 2 macro as Soothing Mist. I would just simply hover my mouse over them and spam Control 2, Soothing Mist into Vivify spams. Let's say that there's a tank that's taking a whole bunch of damage. I know he's got a big bleed on him. He's going to be taking a ton of damage within the next 10 seconds. I am prepping him with a Soothing Mist, an Enveloping Mist, then into Vivify spams. So those are kind of your clutch single target heal macros there. Followed up with a Life Cocoon as well if needed. Then your single target rotation is going to be pretty much the exact same as your AoE rotation. You're just replacing Spinning Crane Kick with Rising Sun Kick. That's pretty much it. And the single target rotation is going to be pretty much the same as the AoE rotation was. The only difference is you're going to be replacing your Spinning Crane Kick with your Rising Sun Kick. Now, one thing you have to remember is if you don't get the reset on your Rising Sun Kick, there's other things that you can be doing. But sometimes you're going to get in that awkward situation where Rising Sun Kick just doesn't reset from Artesian to the Monastery, and you have to do other things. So let's do a couple rotations here. So probably what I would do is get a couple Renewing Mist out before pull. Then I would go into a Jadefire Stomp into a Chi Burst. Then I'd go into a Tea, Thunder Focus Tea, Crackling Jade Lightning, more Renewing Mists, then into a Rising Sun, 2 Tiger Palms, into a Blackout. And I didn't get the reset, so then I would probably just fall into another Jadefire Stomp, into more Renewing Mists. If there's absolutely nothing to do, you can always Spinning Crane Kick as well. It's not ideal, but if there's nothing else to press, might as well. And then, yeah, my biggest tip for bosses is just pairing your cooldowns with hard-hitting abilities. Just, learn the boss's rotation. When the big damage phase goes out, press your Crane. When the next one comes out, use your Celestial Conduit. So that's kind of my take on single target and bosses.